everyone, I hope you're doing well. So I'm back with a new video. And today we're going to do a little bit of mechanics on this Ferrari F430. So today we're going to focus on the gearbox. We have several maintenance adjustments to make over time. So the goal of these videos on the Ferrari is to show you that yes, at home, we are capable of maintaining such a car. Just because it's called Ferrari doesn't mean we have to maintain it at Ferrari. But in any case, the idea is really to show you that with a little bit of tooling, let's be honest, because it requires relatively high-end diagnostic tools to access the modules and make adjustments. But it's not impossible, and it's not as closed off as we're led to believe in the industry. A little bit of Ferrari. So my friends, we place it in the workshop in the garage, and I'll explain everything we're going to do on it. On this car, we have what is called an F1 gearbox. F1, it's a gearbox that comes from Formula 1 that Ferrari has put into its cars. So, it is also installed on the Maserati Quattroporte and Gran Turismo. It's a highly sophisticated, high-performance gearbox that consumes a lot of clutch. That's a bit of a downside, but well, never mind, it's still a sports car. But on it, there are settings because it is automated. What does automated mean? We all know the manual gearbox. Manual, well, it's your foot and your gear lever. We all know the automatic gearbox, which is a fully automatic gearbox that manages the gears according to the engine's needs. And then we have the automated gearbox. The automated one can be in either automatic mode or manual mode. So what does that mean? It means that basically you have a hydraulic unit that acts like a robot to shift the gears for you. In other words, it's a manual gearbox equipped with an auxiliary robot that shifts the gears instead of your foot and hand. But we are clearly dealing with a manual gearbox configuration, mechanically speaking. So when we maintain the gearbox, we will have to drain the gearbox, yes. We will have to clean the gearbox filter, yes. But above all, the maintenance of the gearbox doesn't stop there. We will have to drain the robot as well, using a different oil for the drain, bleed. And then we will have to adjust the slip point, adjust the clutch. Of course, these last 2 points will not be done mechanically, but electronically with a diagnostic tool. The PIS, well, it's not the PIS. It's not il PIS. It's the PIS. It's often discussed at Maserati and Ferrari because we are going to talk about these same F1 gearboxes, which are robotized gearboxes with a dual clutch. And so this PIS, it's an English term that, to put it very simply, is just the slip point of the clutch. So in fact, it seems logical that your disc is here, your clutch is there. So of course it's much closer, but it's to give you an example. When your clutch wears out, meaning the friction disc of the clutch wears out, there will be a gap between the pressure plate, well, between the disc, the flywheel, and your lining disc, which will widen as it wears out. So as a result, the biting point will inevitably change. I think you understand this logically. If we widen the space naturally, if we were to adjust the space, basically, we would adjust it in millimeters. Basically, we will set the vehicle to a clutch, new. Both surfaces are new. There is a sensor that will measure the distance between them, and we will tell it the distance we want so that it shifts gears at the right moment. I don't know about metals. It will be set to 4.3 millimeters. 9. Your clutch wears out, the lining of the disc shrinks. So as a result, this space increases. So as a result, to return to the same spacing that the new clutch had, we will simply need to reduce the clearance So this distance. You understand? Since we increase by lowering the lining, we will simply need to reduce this numerical A spacing to bring it closer, especially since it has not worn out. There you go. I hope it's simple to understand. And basically, if we don't make this adjustment during the gearbox maintenance, what will happen? Like with a manual clutch, when your clutch is worn, you will tend to make it slip. What will happen? The robot is not smarter than you, it will do exactly the same thing. When this part is no longer properly adjusted, not because it got out of adjustment, because it doesn't get out of adjustment, but because the clutch has worn out, we will simply have clutch slippage, either when shifting gears or simply when maneuvering. And so, by returning to a correct setting, we will have a more responsive gearbox that will function better. And above all, if there is less slippage, the clutch will wear out less quickly. It's mechanics, it's very simple to understand. I will explain everything to you once we take care of that with the diagnostic tool. Today, my gearbox has absolutely no symptoms except for this notorious slippage. That is to say, when I maneuver a little, I have to accelerate a bit harder for the car to really move forward or backward at the start. And between first and second gear, I have a little bit of slippage. So clearly, it comes from that setting. So we will adjust it on the road once we have serviced the car. We will also measure the wear of the clutch because that will be of interest to many owners of Audi R8, F430 or Maserati, because these are really things we take into account, because today a clutch on a Ferrari costs between 6,000 and 7,000 euros. So it's really important when buying it to be aware of the condition, the wear of the clutch, in order to simply consider or negotiate a sum of money on the vehicle. I also insist, I will let you know, I will try to remember when I show you the clutch wear. These values can be tampered with, so be careful to always confirm the value with an invoice. I will show you, well, I won't show you because I don't want to tamper with it, but I will explain to you with the diagnostic tool how one can electronically reset a new clutch without ever having changed the clutch and thus deceive the buyer. So that's why I give you tips, but always keep in mind that the best verification is still an invoice. So here, as every time we work on this car, first we lift it halfway on the lift, remove the diffuser and the under tray, and then we get to the heart of the matter. And we can see that it gets dirty really fast, even though we had cleaned it. When we did the engine oil change, what did I have to do? 600 kilometers since then, and it's already quite dirty. All right, now we lift the car. What will be understood is what will happen here. We will have the gearbox filling with a small rod that will allow the oil level adjustment. Here, we will have the gearbox draining. So we have a hexagonal screw that will allow us to drain. Here we will have the screen, so the gearbox filter that will allow us to remove the metal shavings inside. And I will especially explain how to check if it's serious or not. And then here, what is hidden behind this heat shield is the famous gearbox robot that allows us to change gears. So either we let it manage completely automatically with the automatic mode, which is really lousy, or we decide to switch it to manual, and at that point we change gears manually. The purge that we will need to do to drain the robot system. So the robot system, what you need to know is that we are not going to drain it 100%. It's like the gearbox, and like an automatic gearbox, we can't completely remove 100%, as there is still a little bit of oil left, especially in the actuators here. But basically, we will have a purge screw here at the level of the clutch, so the clutch release bearing. Here it goes to the clutch release bearings because the clutch release bearing is hydraulic, also managed by the robot. The large hose that arrives here, so the purge will be done here. The reservoir is up there, so we remove the last cover to access the famous reservoir, and we move on to the mechanics. And the F1 pump then, the famous F1 pump that everyone talks about, is located here with the famous reservoir that will allow us to access the robot's fluid. The robot's fluid is ATF, Dextron 3 or 4, knowing that we can use 4 even if it's 3, since it's the evolution. it's better, so we can do it. And for the gearbox, we use 75, 90, 100% synthetic with the LS standard, which means low slipping. That means limited slip for limited slip differentials. Because inside there is a differential that needs this oil. So there you go. We're not making anything up. These are the standards recommended by Ferrari. So we remove this little cover. And there we find our famous reservoir. So there, you see, this is supposed to be the sign of a gearbox. Indeed, Italian engineers have quite a creative mindset, let's say. So you have to imagine that it's a gearbox and this is the gear lever. So the first time it happened to me with my Maserati, I did wonder what it was. I went to check on the internet and it's a gearbox. You have to imagine it really. In short, the F1 pump is located here, the famous F1 pump. Then we have a hydraulic unit behind. And for us, it will happen here with bleed screws here and here. So for the drain screw right here, it allows for extension. So what you need to know is that the gearbox holds 3.5 liters of oil. And generally, we manage to change between 2.75 and 3 liters. We never completely drain the gearbox because it's originally 3.5 liters. But on a vehicle, we never drain everything. It has held up well. We can say the car has 27,000 kilometers. And in my opinion, the gearbox oil is originally from 2006. I'm just going to close it and unscrew the fill plug for the simple reason that basically I want to create an air intake. So that really, with the speed of the oil flow, we flush out all the grime that could potentially be at the bottom. The good smell of gearbox oil. There. You will see. We have a little, you hear the pressure inside. We have a little thing, so the level was good. I was right at max. So on that side, R to S. The idea is really to be able to create a draft to clear all of this out. If you don't remove the filling, it will make a glug, glug, glug sound like a water bottle. And as a result, we will eject the grime more slowly. So here we have a small button, a magnetic cap. So we're going to the workbench, as usual, to do a little check. So the caps, it's always very interesting to check them. So here we have a little bit, we see some grime on top of the filings, but that's nothing too abnormal. In fact, it's even completely normal. Why? Here already we are dealing with metal dust, so that's just the contact, the normal operation of the box that produces this dust. So it's better that it's on the cap than in the oil, but it's simply what will darken your gearbox oil. Secondly, what's even more normal is that the car has 27,000 km/h, so we can say it's barely out of the break-in period. And when a gearbox is breaking in, you will certainly see it on the screen that we will remove later. And quite simply, the parts will settle into place just like in an engine, and it will create metal shavings, it will produce chips. So basically, the teeth will interlock with each other, so they will wear against one another. Hence the fact that we have a bit of dust like this, dust that will return much less quickly. Then, the first oil change is always the dirtiest, so to speak, and then regarding the aluminum castings. So you will see, this is where I will show you later how we do it on the sieve to see if it's serious or not. Because when you see what we will collect on the sieve, I have no doubt it might alert some, but it is absolutely, but rarely, abnormal. And for that, we just need a small magnet. So here, I take the time to clean all of this. But basically, when you cast your aluminum part, when you make your gearbox characters, well, you will see what we call casting burrs. And when it operates, well, Quite simply, these casting burrs will be deburred. I can't explain it any better. And it will end up in the sieve. That's what the sieve is for. So as long as it's not magnetized, let's say it's not a big deal. And even if it's a little magnetized, you just need to analyze the size of the chips to understand if it's abnormal or not. That's roughly how a gearbox works, at least the analysis part. Because I've seen many, especially on forums, who freak out as soon as they see the sieve, but it's normal. It's all gearboxes, whether it's Ferrari or not, it's all gearboxes. When they are new, they do that. When I did the buggy, it was the same thing. Yet the buggy has 1300 kiloliter. So here, tightening, very fine. We are dealing with a plastic sieve. If you tighten it hard, I won't draw you a picture. It breaks. So here we proceed with caution. In fact, it has a slight magnetic effect. There is a small O-ring. And this small O-ring is always a little bit stuck over time. We use a small screwdriver and proceed gently. Once we've loosened it, we take a bigger one. There you go. You see what I was talking about? So we're going to analyze this on the tables. Well, I think there's a good majority of individuals who, when they remove the sieve and see this, are like, oh, my gearbox, it's dead. Well, absolutely not, actually. For many, these are debris, either from assembly or dirt or molding. So we take this little bundle of junk, and we already noticed that this is a lot of seals. You see, these are pieces of sealant paste. So these are pieces of paste. Seals that were used during the assembly and Maranello of the car. So you can already see there's nothing abnormal. So, fortunately, we have this famous sieve, because otherwise, this mass of silicone could pass into the lubrication channels of the gearbox, and thus clog the gearbox in terms of lubrication. And then it's not good at all. Then we equip ourselves with a magnet, a fairly powerful magnet, and we run all this mess over the magnet to see if there's anything metallic. So why? It's very simple. The gearbox part, so the casing elements, are made of aluminum. So when it's casting burrs, as I told you, it doesn't get cemented. The gearbox gears, on the other hand, are made of metal. And so that it gets cemented. So if it's your gear that gets damaged abnormally, it will stick to it. If it's burrs that are just stuck in the sieve, it won't get cemented on it. Then we also have the color. When it has a brass color, we know it can come from the gearbox synchronizers. So that means a gearbox synchronization is worn out abnormally. Oil, too old, poor gear shifting. Well, there you go, the consequences are multiple. But here, in this case, we see that it's 100% silicone. Here, I still have some silicone. Here, I have a small metal chip. So metal, I don't know, so I'm going to pass it next to the magnet. And you see, it doesn't get magnetized. No matter how close I bring it, it doesn't get magnetized. So this, in this case, is a small piece of aluminum, so nothing abnormal. And you see the box is impeccable. So, in fact, apart from two small pieces of aluminum and bits of silicone, we have absolutely no dirt in the gearbox. So that's a very, very good point. We clean all that, change the seals, and then we can proceed with reassembly. So there are some who change this piece here. Well, it's up to you. I think it's useless. It's nothing more than a mesh. I don't see the point except for aesthetics, because normally it's white. And over time, you see, it yellows a little, apart from the aesthetic aspect. I don't see any point in changing it, but well, everyone does as they wish. So, for your information, I have the technical manuals, Ferrari. So what I'm showing you here is what's indicated in the Ferrari technical manual. You see, in the Ferrari technical manual, it doesn't even say that this needs to be changed. The same goes for the standards and torque settings that I indicate to you. All are part of the Ferrari manual. The only difference is that the oil brand recommendation from Ferrari is Shell, because they are affiliated with Shell. And I am going to use Motul. And why not Syntex? Very good question. In fact, simply because you see what we have from Syntex at the moment, I mean, for the moment, because actually the one I need is on order, but there is a 5-week manufacturing delay. In fact, here we have GL4, GL5, but it is not LS. So this one, it is made for gearboxes, but not for limited slip gearboxes. And in this case, it's our situation with the Ferrari. So I have some Motul 300V gear coming, which meets the standards recommended by Ferrari. And so it will be compatible. Otherwise, I would have had to wait 5 to 6 weeks to receive the oil from Syntex. But unfortunately, I've started the project and I don't necessarily want to drive. Actually, that's my slightly obsessive side, driving the car. If I know that the oil is too old, and in this case, it was the original. So there you go. I'm not a fan. I prefer to buy oil. And you will be able to find the oil from Syntex very soon, compatible for these gearboxes. I remind you that all the products and tools to use, I will put the links in the video description, available on metalgarage.fr. Come on, let's make all this new again. You see every little part when you buy it. At Ferrari, it is branded. New parts of Ferrari. So even if the seal is clearly not made by Ferrari, but I put back 100% original parts, it avoids misunderstandings. We're going to put a small drop of oil on it. The lubrication of the seal is just to prevent it from rolling when we fit it in, because if it rolls, it can get cut, and if it gets cut, it's a mess. For tightening, this one there isn't a specified torque on the RTR, so we tighten very gently. It's plastic, we don't force it. For filling the box, as I explained to you, since at Syntex we haven't yet received the 75 or 140 LS, I simply use Motul Gear 300 LS. That's what I'm used to using, so I won't change my habits until we receive Syntex. Of course, this type of oil will arrive at Syntex. I don't know when we will release this video, but right now we are. In the first week of September, it should arrive mid-October. The manufacturing is underway and there are 5 to 6 weeks of production. Every time we introduce a new reference, that's why, unfortunately, I don't have it for the Ferrari, but it's not a big deal. For next time, we will add it before adding the oil. I will add my additive, so here I will use a ceramic additive, the VRX gear ceramic additive specially developed for gearboxes. Why do I insist? Because, as I mentioned in the video earlier, we have an E gear on it, the E differential, and therefore we have a limited slip differential, hence the specific oil. And so it is absolutely necessary to have an additive compatible with this technology. And here Veris gear with Xenon ceramic technology does it. So that's the one I chose. And incidentally, since we're dealing with a Ferrari that heats up extremely, it makes perfect sense to use an additive that will also help cool the gearbox. Now, we don't have an overflow gearbox here. We have a gearbox that fills up a bit like an engine with a level, a gauge. But I always have the habit of putting it in first. Now that we've filled the gearbox, we screw in the small level rod. And check. So, I'm just a little below the max. So I'm going to add a little more oil. And there we are, right at max. Perfect. Well, we tighten that. Okay, so now that we've finished filling the gearbox and have set the level, we screw it in. and this time it's 49 newtons. There you go. And now we take care of bleeding the robot's hydraulic system, so now it will happen here. The idea is to bleed it, which is good, but changing the fluid is better. So since it will take the fluid from the reservoir and send it into the robot, it will pass through the robot to the bleed point. Well, we will first siphon the reservoir,